So I'll just make this short. Thanks for coming this morning to the Realm and Biome task group working session. And thank you for showing up to a lot of these type working sessions. We have a couple more this week. I think we're done on Thursday. All the videos will be on YouTube, and I'm gonna turn over to the host.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Cecilie Svenningsen. I'm the convener of the Realm Biome and Environmental Materials Task Group. I will just start off by telling you some practicals, which is that the meeting is recorded, as Ben just said, and it will be put on YouTube. So just be aware that the person who is talking in this meeting will be included in the public recording. So if you don't want your image to be shown, turn off your camera when you talk during the discussion. And then while I'm presenting, please feel free to ask questions in the chat. We can come back to them when I'm done with the presentation. And in the discussions afterwards, please raise your hand if you have any comments or questions. So with that being said, I'm just going to introduce the task group as it is. It's B, who's the convener. I'm in GBIF, where I'm a project manager, and I'm also joined by Kate Engelhoff, who is a science officer in the GBIF Secretariat. And then we have Pierre-Luigi Buttigieg, who has a lot of different titles, but one of the main things he's part of this task group is because he's the chief editor of the Environment Ontology, which is one of the sources which is proposed for some of these terms. And then John Wieczorek has been very helpful in providing support for the general process of how we do vocabulary enhancements to Darwin Core. We started with drafting the charter, which is public and it can be found on the Chadwick webpage. And then the task group officially started in early 2025, so last year. We have a GitHub repository with a few issues and where you can also find meeting notes. And we've only had 3 meetings so far. I can explain why later, but generally we haven't had a lot of activity, but we're also a very small group. And we've been waiting for some updates to the Envo on the Envo side. So the initial issue and why we started the task group was because we wanted to include the realm term in Darwin Core, because people do not have a way to have a very general way of stating the event or an occurrence, whether it was terrestrial, marine, or freshwater. So like very, very overall, I know realm can be differently described and defined, and I'll get into that later. But just to make it very clear, the purpose of realm was really to introduce this very overarching umbrella. And why does it matter? Because you could argue that you could just use coordinates to infer whether it's terrestrial or marine through gazetteers, but they're not sufficient to really find aggregated records across data sets, because you have to bear in mind that there are spatio-temporal considerations. First of all, you may not always have coordinates for a record. Second of all, it's things change over time. So something that might have been a field or have a specific land cover 10 years later might be a forest or an emerging forest. And so when the environment was in space and time, for example, also just think of paleo, matters for whether it was terrestrial or marine. So you cannot rely on coordinates alone. Now, realm is not already a proposed term in Chadwick or in Darwin Core, but biome and environmental material have been proposed since 2014 and hasn't been resolved in public review yet. Because these terms are nested or related, the task group decided to focus on all 3 terms and see if we could figure out a way to either update the proposals so people would, so the terms could be ratified, and whether we wanted to explore if there were any authoritative source for generating vocabularies for these terms. For biome, both Envo and which includes the WWF terms or subclasses, I think it's called, and IUCN Global Ecosystem Typology have been proposed. So we have 2 different sources for a proposed vocabulary for biome. And Envo did start the work last year, or maybe even the year before, to try to incorporate the IUCN I'm going to call it GET from now on, GET into the biome class where they already support WWF. However, it is very challenging work to reconcile the two different frameworks, and it has not happened yet. So solely recommending ENVO is probably not the right approach right now, but I will get back to that in the end. Now, just to explain to people who haven't spent as much time as we have already, there's the WWF really has three frameworks that are based on what I would call realm, which can be argued is not realm, but basically the terrestrial, freshwater, and the marine ecoregions. They are all structured within in specific, those three realms, and that's based on ecoregions. But even within these three frameworks or three organizations, they are slightly different. So you have TEO, which is the terrestrial ecoregions. They're grouped into these biogeographic realms and these biomes and major habitats. But if you look at MEOW, the marine ecoregions of the world, they're nested into something called provinces instead, which is nested into 12 realms. And they are also more focused on the coastal waters and continental shelves with a less focus on deep ocean pelagic systems. So even though it's a really good source and quite comprehensive source, they differ a bit. But the IUCN GET structures it into 4 core realms and 6 transitional realms. And I've highlighted subterranean in the core realm just because that is not something that is dealt with in WWF at all. You don't have subterranean realms or systems in those classifications. So what IUCN gets is really creating a very overarching structure where you both could accommodate the core realms and these transitional realms that do occur, like subterranean freshwater, subterranean marine, freshwater marine. And then they organize biomes and functional groups into below these realms. So as I mentioned, the main issue is that the ENVO, which incorporates WWF and IUCN GET, are two very different frameworks, because IUCN and the GET the topology classifies ecosystems by ecological function, whereas WWF classifies regions by evolutionary history and species distribution. So it's two different ways of approaching sort of the same thing. The freshwater, terrestrial, and marine ecoregions can fit as lower levels within GET realms, similar to biome or functional groups in GET, but it's a bit, they could fit both places, some of them, different places, both of them. But as an example, you have from the terrestrial ecoregions of the world, you have I don't know how to pronounce this, Sundarbans, mangroves, but they could map both to these transitional realms, which is marine freshwater terrestrial or marine terrestrial. And then you have the freshwater river mouths and the marine coastal zones. They could map to this freshwater marine transitional realm in the GET. So to try to get moving with this task group, we have created issues for all three proposed terms with a proposed solution. Some have 2 suggestions within one term because we're a bit uncertain. And because we're only 4 people in the task group, we could really use input from the community at this stage. And we hope that, that the different solutions I'm proposing to you now will get you started. You can either comment here and we can have a discussion here, but you're also very welcome to go into GitHub and join the discussion in the specific issues. So for realm, we are considering adding global ecosystem typology realm as a term to Darwin Core to specifically allow data holders to share this very general information at the highest level, whether it's terrestrial, freshwater, and according to the structure of IUCN GET, which would mean that we would create a vocabulary that is true to IUCN GET and use a similar approach as Audiovisual Core have already done to highlight the source behind the term in the definition of the term. And so we can refer to the vocabulary from the term list. We, at this stage, do not have the capacity to propose by geographic realm. It's already part of Latin Core, but that's of course not for occurrence data. Or it's part of Latin Core, not Darwin Core. It could be handled by another task group. We will not propose the WWF ecoregions. That could also be handled by another task group. But we do need to create use cases needed for the user feedback report since we are creating a vocabulary, and we would welcome people who could help us creating those use cases. I was attending the standards mapping between standards session last week, and maybe this mapping of WWF ecoregions to the global ecosystem typology realms could be handled within that, but I'm not sure how that would work in practice, how Darwin Core would use that or how users would use that mapping. So for Biome, there are two possibilities. You could add Biome to Darwin Core and recommend Envo. It's really not dependent on having the IUCN GET typology as a term. Those two could function independently. But another option we are considering is to add Biome and Biome source to Darwin Core because we have two potential sources, which is Envo and WWF or IUCN GET. We could allow data holders to share the biome and which source they used for the biome. I'm thinking it might be a nice solution also because I know there are national ways of structuring some of this. So this would also allow like a national level reporting of a specific biome or habitat maybe, and then declaring the source or so the framework that would use specifically for that survey. And then for environmental material, there's really only one available source, which is Envo. So we just want to update the already existing term proposal so it doesn't contain namespaces. We would say it is recommended to use Envo, but it's not restricted to. And we will not create a dedicated controlled vocabulary. We could do that, but that would need a revision of, I think there's more than 1,000 terms that where we would need to somehow evaluate how they matter for biodiversity. And I think that is very, very challenging and not within the scope of this task group. So these are the three proposals we have so far. You can find them on GitHub under our issues. Yeah, and with that, I just want to hear what you have to say. Do you have any questions or comments? And if not, it's also fine. I cannot see the chat, so maybe you can help me, Ben, with that. Oh, I see there's chat now. Now I can see the chat.
Cool. I got you.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, only stay for 20 minutes. No questions. Okay, so far. I can see Falco raised.
Yes.
Yep, please go ahead.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks. So I work for the Global Ecosystems Atlas, which is working with a convention on biological diversity, and we're using very much IUCN GET as our standard. And before we move on, because I wasn't in any of the previous messages, I just want to understand the rationale of having those two definitions of biome, because they're very different in the sense that the global ecosystem typology includes intensive use biomes, so croplands, plantations. And I suspect that it'll change more frequently as habitats are transformed for agriculture or forestry. Whereas the ecoregions are much more static. They don't change. So has this been discussed previously and has it been resolved? Do you want definition of biome that's more responsive to human pressures? Or do you want one that's more static and probably more robust?
Yeah, so that's why we wanted, at least that's why I'm leaning more to having this biome source solution, because it allows for I don't know. Maybe you can answer that. Is there versioning of the global ecosystem?
There is.
There is.
Not
Okay.
big releases, like every new publication will come out 10 years later and say, hey, we revised our things, I mean, with better
Yeah.
data. But yeah, there is.
Yeah.
Yeah, the typology is pretty static, but the
True.
actual value of a coordinate is going to change.
Hmm.
Um, whereas the ecoregions, they don't include human biomes.
No. No.
So the pixel essentially stays the same and on by a geographical time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good, but you don't think having biome and biome source could be a way to support both? I'm mostly thinking that we need to support both because data holders might use both. I know there are people who use global ecosystem. It's also recommended for the freshwater guide in GBIF. But we do have a lot of researchers who might more want to share, ecoregions. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
yeah. Sorry, if I could just give an example. I mean, if
Yes.
somebody has an occurrence which is now tropical lowland forest,
Mhm.
and the ecoregion, I'm not sure what the biome equivalent is, but they'll both be tropical lowland forest. But
Mhm.
10 years from now, that might change in the GET, and it might be converted to cropland or urban area.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
suppose the original record would be the same, but if somebody does a repeat survey, it'll be a different biome 10 years
Yeah,
from now.
that's
Um,
true. But that's also why I think it has to be a term on its own and not restricted to the coordinate because it's so dependent on when in time and space that the recorded occurrence or event happened.
there are lots of different versions too. There's the Nature Conservancy and the WWF biomes, and then the terrestrial regions. There's ecoregions 2007, and there's anthropogenic biomes. There's a whole lot of them, different criteria that people use for these different things.
Mm.
The word biome might be a little bit, um, because it's like, well, I mean, not really. I mean, it does refer to sort of one type of these sort of um, biogeographic, you know, classification of land masses. I think the versioning thing is resolution too. Like the different satellite data comes out and they've reclassified things and the categorizations are the same, but they just
Mm.
have a better resolution so they can draw lines a little more or like the pixel is much smaller, right?
Mm.
Landsat is very big and then it gets better and better. Um, but it makes sense because there are versions. I mean, SciS has the source in it, and there are things that are named the same. Like the Nature Conservancy has one, and there's another one, and they're almost identical, except somebody at the Nature Conservancy disagreed with another one, so they came out their own version and as a separate category because this is what they wanted to do. But they're essentially the exact same thing, right?
For
This happens
biome.
as well. Yeah. It's the Nature Conservancy has the ecoregions, and the other one is it's early. I'm trying to find
Yeah.
my notes on this stuff, but it happens, right? Um,
Yeah.
it just depends on
But
when you do,
but to try to follow up on what you say, Felgo, I don't think we would want. I don't think Tadwick or Darwin Core would want to propose a controlled vocabulary for biome since it is not dynamic. Or it is, sorry, because it is dynamic. That's what
Yeah.
I'm trying to say. Sorry. So we want to, it has to allow for that change over time and the updates at least.
It would be great, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't see it's doable, at least not for a global scale and across disciplines. But just to sorry to ask Falco, what do you think about the idea of declaring a value for biome and where that source of the biome, this biome source comes from? Do you think I'm just trying to understand if you think that's a good or a bad idea.
no, I think it's a necessary idea if you don't choose between one of the two definitions of biome. Like
Okay.
if you have potentially two, then you have to have that extra source
Yeah.
information so that you know what people mean by biome.
Yeah.
But I mean, why I'm asking is I don't know if there's a case to be made of choosing one definition for biome. And I
Yeah.
think they're different enough. They reflect different things. So it's not, um, yeah, like I think conceptually they're two different things, if I understand it correctly.
Yeah, I think so
Um,
too. Yeah. As far as yeah.
Yeah, and then of course I'm biased obviously because we're working with the GET a lot, but I see a
Mm,
lot of the Convention of Biological Diversity's monitoring system and the monitoring framework that's being proposed is really pushing IUCN GET. So they're
mm,
trying to encourage the uptake by parties to the CBD to use that definition as well. So I'm just wondering if
mm,
we must just jump on the bandwagon or,
mm.
yeah.
Well, an alternative to this could be to propose an equal term to, like we would propose global ecosystem typology realm, would be to have global ecosystem typology biome. So it's clear that it's from IUCN GET. But I think the main issue is that we do have uh, users or data holders in the community that want to see WWF supported as well. Um, and and maybe that's not a bad thing, but I think use cases would probably be very useful. Come in. I think use cases where we investigate what people actually have in their data would be very valuable to make that distinction or that decision. So one thing I'm proposing in one of the issues, I don't remember which, probably the biome one, was to have is to look at what people put in the verbatim data in habitat, because habitat is a Darwin Core term already. And I suspect people might put in a lot of different values, some of them even pertaining to higher level, like but so that's one of the use cases I want to create, but we need community-based use cases as well. So large data holders that share that type of data or have that data and want to share it would be very welcome. Yeah. So yeah, even your use case, Falco, if you have some data that could be used for that. But you of course already have a focus for your data, so maybe that's a bit biased. Um, yeah. Does anyone else have any questions? Do you need? I think I would like to stop sharing, Ben, just because I want to share the link to our GitHub repository.
Sure. You can.
Yeah,
Yeah, there you go.
started. Oh, sorry. So sorry, I was just joined by Kate, one of our task group members. Let me just check. Uh, please go ahead, just sit down, it's fine. Um, I'm just sending my link. Oh, John.
Hello.
Hello.
Um, so it sounds like from what Falco was saying that it would be a useful exercise to understand if it's possible to have a single definition that covers both types of vocabularies. It sounds like it isn't. If it's already known that it isn't possible, that suggests that you need two terms because the
Mm,
semantics would be different.
mm.
Um, and that's irregardless of whether you could force it into a combo of one term with a controlled vocabulary. If they mean different things, you're kind of stuck, it seems to me.
I think that's what happened for Envo because they started they started to try to integrate IUCN GET into biomes, and they didn't finish that. And that's why we only had 3 meetings because I think we spent I think most of better part of a half a year waiting for that. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. So somebody did try to explore that and couldn't do it.
There's
Um,
the flip side too, as a user, if you were trying to leverage the term, if it was a single term, even with a source, um, it would dilute the capacity to use that for searching or for filtering or anything like that.
yeah.
That's the real casualty here. Is that like, I mean, a control vocabulary would be fantastic, right? You can see the power behind that and how you could do with it, but it's like it's so hard. Um,
But I think at least if we had, at least for a search capability, what I'm thinking is that if we have the just overall umbrella terms of what I call realm, this, terrestrial, at least that allows us to map, biomes or any lower level could potentially be mapped to this higher. So at least it's not as detailed as it could be, but at least it could be maybe made searchable. That's my main goal. If we in GBIF could, like see if people provide whatever Sunderban mangrove, then we could automatically map it in the realm so people could search for, at least would find those records that were relevant. And that's why I like these transitional realms, because it gives a bit more flexibility than just terrestrial marine.
Couldn't you do that now? I mean, you could just say, if you have a georeference specimen, we're gonna run it through this spatial data and then output a biome or two, and then put that in the data as in the.
I don't want to. I think that the challenge, Ben, with the georeference is that you also have to accommodate for the date, and I keep coming back to paleo things.
That's totally true.
And
Yeah.
maybe there's even, I don't know, maybe
Yeah.
there is probably sort of gazetteers for this for paleo. I don't know.
I wouldn't touch paleo. I'd just put that
No.
aside.
Yeah, no.
Paleo
I think we
environmental
need,
stuff.
I think really think we need some terms to make things searchable, just
Yeah.
basically searchable across very different data sources that may provide coordinates, that may provide, event dates, that might provide, polygons. I think we need a term where the structure could be captured in a term or two. But John, what you're saying is that biome and biome source would not be enough. It would be better to have a dedicated term for IUCN GET biome, right? Is that what you're
The
thinking?
semantics are different. It seems to me that you're building a future problem otherwise.
Yeah. I think our main issue is that we cannot just say, I thought it was as simple as when I started the task group, that we just say we go with IUCN GET. But it's not what people want. It seems there is a big need for also support of WWF and the ecoregions. So that's why we're a bit of a stalemate, John.
So, do you have the same problem, same semantic type problem at what you're calling realm? There's no single definition
No.
that can be made that includes what people do with their controlled vocabularies there, or no? Because I mean, if even those are different, it's going to start getting ugly. It's already ugly if you have to have two terms, but if you have to have even more terms at a realm level than what you hoped to do at the very broad level of filtering between 3 or 4 categories, or now even with the transitional ones more, then it's the same kind of problem.
Yes, also because one of the examples I showed was that at least one of the ecoregions could fit in 2 different transitional realms, depending how you look at it. Like, what is mangroves? Is that terrestrial, freshwater, marine, or is it freshwater marine? It sort of depends on where this sample was taken, I guess, so the occurrence was made. Good point. Anyone else have any comments? If not, you're also very welcome. I linked to the GitHub repository we have. So if you go under issues, you can see the different terms suggested, what we propose as it is now. We'd like to keep the discussion going after this meeting too, because I don't think there's an easy solution. I do hope we can come to some conclusion for biome and environmental material, since it's been since 2014. Um, and I do think it's a shame that something so generic in some ways. I know it's not generic when you look at the details of things, but it's a shame that people cannot search on this. And what I find a bit worrisome is that ever since we started this task group, I've been approached by so many people who want to do the same for habitat, and that's even more detailed. So if we can't even come to a conclusion for something like the highest level, which would be considered realm, then I don't see how we can move forward with anything like habitat either. But yeah, sorry, that's a bit discerning. Falco?
Yeah, I just wondered. So IUCN also has a habitat classification system, which they use for the red list of species. And there was a process of doing a cross-referencing between the IUCN habitat classification and the global ecosystem typology, but they haven't gotten very far either. So I think they're also struggling to figure out the details there. But I think that might be more likely and more tenable in the short to medium term than a cross-referencing between IUCN GET and, for example, the European Union's habitats classification system. I don't think there's an incentive to align those, for instance. So yeah,
Okay.
the ecosystem slash habitat cross-referencing is also a little bit challenging.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I didn't know that was going on. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. Sorry, taking notes. But alternatively, we would have to, for the realm, we could also just incorporate, but I think it's a bit of a shame, but we could just consider having just the core realm supported. I just think we would have a lot of data holders who would struggle finding the place, the right value to provide there as soon as they have anything that's transitional at least. Yeah.
And those transitional realms are because they are disjunct from all the other categories.
What do you mean by disjunct from all the other categories? I think
If you
it's
were to map
mm,
something into one of the transitional realms, there is no way that you could say it was one of the broader categories because it has characteristics of both somehow.
I
So
guess
if
so.
that's the case, it's not just can't be,
Mm,
sorry, that it is disjunct and it couldn't be mapped to one of the other ones.
hmm I think I'd have to look at what the specific definitions of the different. I don't remember them, but I would have to look at. I hope the definitions provide some clarity on that. Maybe
Yeah,
you know, Falco. Yeah.
the GET is definitely, they're distinct. So for example, a wetland is a transition between freshwater and terrestrial. So
hmm
they're ecologically distinct and also geographically distinct. I think it's just in the classification system, they call them transitional. But actually, there are then 10 realms in the GET. It's not that the four core realms are hierarchically higher than the six transitional ones. They're all on the same level.
Mm. But that's also why I guess having at least supporting the next level of the IUCN GET biomes would make good sense for data holders that do use IUCN GET because they would probably have values to provide in both. John?
I raised my hand separately because this is a slightly different discussion from the ones that I've proposed earlier, and that is sort of a strategy approach. What if you made a commitment and said, okay, this, what is very well developed and comprehensive is IUCN GET. That's an easy thing to incorporate
Mm,
without trying to solve these broader issues. That gets the community capable in the short term and in a sort of unambiguous way. Get that in place, get people using that, and then let public pressure suggest differences or changes or additions beyond that.
Yeah, that's an option. Yeah, we could propose that.
Because it seems for those who use it that it's quite a good system at several levels even.
Hmm.
And at the very least, it's a good model for how to do things.
It also seems very actively developed. I know there's a public review thing going now already for updating some of the I don't remember if it's the biomes or the realms, but that would of course mean a task, I guess, for the maintenance group, unless the task group continues in making sure to update those things, to update the vocabulary based on the updates the IUCN get. But yeah.
As a different aspect to the whole thing, what do those vocabularies look like? Are there IRIs to individual terms? And
Um,
do those change? Are those versioned?
That's a good question. We had a discussion early on in the task group where I think we sort of disagreed. There's there I don't think there are specifically IRIs as far as I remember, but there is I found version I found versions and I found, you know, acknowledgement of the people who contributed to the different versions. But there isn't like, and there's URLs to the different terms, but that's not what you mean by an IRI. I think in this case.
Depends on what's on the other end of that URL.
Yeah. That's not versioned, I'm pretty sure. That's in a separate document I found back in the day. I have to see if I can find that again.
Most have a publication associated with them. So this person has a list of authors because we did a new data set or something and they published it as a shapefile or some kind of web service, but it's not really like a vocabulary in that sort of sense. That's not in their
No.
wheelhouse. It's more GIS data layers and, you know, web mapping services things.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So even that suggests that Tadwig would have to take on the role of
Yes.
providing IRIs
Yes. Yes.
and maintaining that connection, like you just said. Okay.
I think Kate found a publication. Yeah. Um, but yes, that was the idea, that we wanted to do something like audiovisual uh, media extension or core, audiovisual core, where they have this, they mint the RIs and then they refer to the vocabulary or the source of the term. Um, I've linked to an example for Realm. Um, that you can see. It was something Steve Baskow recommended. I think it's a good approach. Yeah.
It's a good paper. It does a good starting point too.
I think we could go ahead. We could go ahead and propose IUCN Get Realm, IUCN Get Biome. Maybe we should consider IUCN Get functional groups as well. Those are the three systems that have been classified as far as I know for now. There are even lower levels than that. I don't know if it's work in the making, but I guess we could, yeah, propose
Yeah,
IUCN Get specifically. Yeah, Falco, sorry.
I can comment on that. So there are 6 levels to the GET, but levels 5 and 6 are usually national-based classifications or very local-based classifications and won't be standardized.
Okay, makes
Level
sense.
3 is the ecosystem functional group, which we're actively trying to map, and it's quite challenged, and we hope to have a global map by this time next year. And then level 4 is just a biogeographical regionalization of level 3, which I think is more tenable and it's more achievable. So, for example, just distinguishing tropical lowland forests in the Congo Basin versus those in the Amazon. They're the same level 3 ecosystem functional group, but clearly they're different biogeographical regions. So that would then be level 4 of the typology.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's a work in progress. I think this is the direction in which things are moving. but it hasn't got the strong foundation just yet that we would like. But obviously, it's hierarchical. So if you had a class for, or you had a category for level 3 of the GET, automatically level 2 and level 1 would be populated because they're mutually exclusive.
Yeah. That sounds good. Okay. Okay, if anyone else have any comments, please feel free to raise your hand or comment in the chat. And again, if not, you're also welcome to join in on the GitHub issue discussion. I will update all the GitHub issues with what we discussed today, so we have the most recent information, and probably change the proposals to accommodate this IUCN GET. I think what this task group really needs is just one approach and something we can propose to the wider community and get into a public review process. Yeah. But if there are no comments or no, do we stay on, Ben, for the remainder of the hour, or are we okay to close it early?
We can close it early. That's okay.
Okay. Oh, thanks for the link, John. Yeah. Okay, then I think we should go ahead and close this session. I
Cool.
appreciate your input and comments also moving forward. And yeah, if you are interested in joining our task group, you're also very welcome. I think we're at a stage now where we need to get the proposals written up and all the documentation ready. So maybe not the most fun part to be part of, but you can. So yeah, without further ado, I'm closing this meeting, but thank you all for joining.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.